Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's time to get started. This is a short webinar, at least it should be a short webinar, and it will be about Pdf Toolbox desktop. Basically, what I want to do in the next half hour or so is to give you a look at what Pdf Toolbox desktop is. This is a webinar, so I'll have a short presentation, and then the major part of the webinar will be a product demonstration, which is typically much more interesting than a presentation. This is all about Pdf Toolbox desktop and what you can do with that product. And as I said, I'm not going to go too much into technical details. This will really be an overview, an introduction if you want. But if you have more specific questions, don't hesitate to ask those as well. So what can you do with Pdf Toolbox? Well, I made a small list. And of course, I'm not going to go over all of these in detail. I'll just let this slide be on the screen for a few seconds. The idea is that in the demo I will go over some of these, but you can see that where sometimes people think about Pdf Toolbox about being all about pre-flight, there is actually a whole heap of other things that you can do with Pdf Toolbox. It's much broader than simply pre-flight. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see that there is yet more, or even more than what was on the first slide. So it wasn't actually very difficult to fill these two slides. I probably could have filled 4 or 5 slides with more or less detailed things that you can do with Pdf Toolbox. And that's also what I'm trying that you will remember from this this webinar and the product demonstration in it at the end, is that there is a whole lot of things you can do in Pdf Toolbox that are very, very simple to do. But the number of things that you can do with the product is actually very extensive, and you can go pretty far with that. So I'll say that up front, and then hopefully by the end of the webinar you'll agree with me on that. So let's take perhaps a step back. What is Pdf Toolbox Desktop? Well, it is a plugin for Acrobat and a standalone application, meaning it's actually both. And if you install the application, Pdf Toolbox will always install the standalone app. And if you have Adobe Acrobat and you allow it, it will also install a plugin into Adobe Acrobat. And that means that you have a choice. You can use this functionality either inside of Adobe Acrobat, or you can use it in a standalone application. For this demo, I'll use the standalone, and that's simply because in that standalone application, I don't have the whole Acrobat UI around it. It's really focused on what Pdf Toolbox can do, and that makes it easier to see what the functionality in Pdf Toolbox is. If you buy the product, it's up to you to decide. You can use it in both. Even at the same time, it doesn't really matter. Small point about the standalone, even if you don't have anything from Adobe on your system, the standalone application will, of course, still work. Everything that it needs is built in, and that means that you can use it on systems where you haven't installed Adobe Acrobat or even Adobe Reader. And sometimes that is quite useful. It's a very easy to use application. There is a switchboard, I'll be showing that in a second, that looks a bit like a smartphone, and the only thing you have to do is click buttons and select some easy options in there. There is also a visualizer that allows you to inspect PDF documents in a very, very visual and quick way. So it was designed to be easy to use, but at the same time, and you could already see that in those 2 slides packed with different things to do. At the same time, there is quite a lot that you can do with Pdf Toolbox. And if you need something that is more customized or more advanced, or then profiles, for example, pre-flight profiles allow you to have that customization. A pre-flight profile allows you to check a document, at the same time also correct the document if you want that to. and the amount of customization that you have there is much higher than in the switchboard and the visualizer, for example. If that is not enough, you can even use variables to make those profiles dynamic and have different behavior for each document that you process. And there is something called process plans that are a higher order profile, if you want, that allow you to introduce logic in your processing of files. So you can do, if this condition is true, then do this action, and if it's not true, then do something else. You can even build logic in there. So it starts with these things that are really easy to use, but as you get more familiar with it, or as you try to do more complex things, the product is powerful enough and has enough content in it that it can also handle those cases. Okay. So all manual, right? And yes, Pdf Toolbox Desktop requires an operator. It requires you or someone else sitting behind a computer, clicking on buttons, entering options, and so on and so on. The cool thing is that if there is at a certain point you have a need to do the same things that you do in Pdf Toolbox Desktop in a high volume environment, or you have many files that you want to process, then Callas also has what is called Pdf Toolbox Server, and that automates those same tasks using hot folders. You simply drop a bunch of files in a hot folder, whether it's 5 or 10,000, it doesn't matter. You drop them in a hot folder and Pdf Toolbox Server picks them up and processes them. Beyond that, there even is a Pdf Toolbox CLI and SDK. And those are made to be integrated into other solutions. And that could be a web portal, it could be an automation application such as FileTrain or Switch or Automation Engine, but it allows you to build an application into a larger solution. And in all cases, it supports the same functionality. Okay, but this is about Pdf Toolbox Desktop. So let's stop this for a second and go to the application itself. I am working on a Mac, and it runs beautifully on Mac, but it also runs on Windows, and it looks the same, has the same functionality, so that doesn't make any difference. Either of those two platforms will work. Any more or less recent version of those platforms will work. Now, what do I have here? Well, I have an application where I can take a PDF file, I can drag that on top of the application, and that will be displayed. The way it's displayed is exactly the same as what you would see in Adobe Acrobat, or it's exactly the same what you would see when this gets printed as well. So the display is accurate. You can see overprint, you can see all transparencies. There are no problems there. This is an application that is focused on graphic arts. So if I look at the bottom of the screen, you can see that there is a PDFX1A tag in there. And that PDFX1A tag means that this document that I have open claims to be a PDFX1A document, a PDFX1A compliant document. So Pdf Toolbox immediately shows that information. It also shows the size of the page. It shows the current page and the number of pages in the document. And if there is an ICC profile, an output intent ICC profile embedded in the document, it will also show you that. So in this case, I have an ISO-coated V2 profile embedded in this PDF document. So it shows you those things immediately. And then the easiest way to do something with this PDF is using the switchboard. And I already have it open. If you want to find it, it's under Tools, Switchboard. And when you look at the switchboard, it very much looks like a smartphone, as I said. I have buttons on here, and behind each of these buttons is a group of functionalities, and functionalities that typically belong together, of course. So if I go to Arrange, let me go back. This is the home screen of the switchboard. If I click on the Arrange button, then I see a bunch of functionality that has to do with imposition in this case. From very simple imposition with things like booklets or step and repeat and so on, to things that are more complex, such as impose. But for each of those, I have a button, and I can go to one. I'll take step and repeat, as I have a business card open. And then, depending on the functionality that you've selected, the switchboard will show you a number of options. As I said in the introduction, the options are typically relatively limited if you use the switchboard. I can select a number of things here, like the number of columns and rows I want to have, spacing between them, what size of document I want to place these on, and so on. But the options are typically kept limited simply to make the switchboard very easy to use. And again, there are ways to do more powerful things. But for now, the only thing I will do is review the options and then say execute. And that execute button runs the options that I have selected, the action with the options that I have selected on the document that is open in Pdf Toolbox. And you can see that it gave me two columns, 4 rows of imposed business cards. And all I have to do now is go to File, say Save As, and I can save that on my desktop as an imposed PDF file, for example. Right? So this is the way the switchboard works for everything. You have a bunch of options. You go to the functionality that you want, either by simply navigating the switchboard or by going into search, and I could look for a booklet, for example, and finding the functionality that way. Simply click on that, I go there, I have some options, I fill those out, and then I say execute to run that on the current document. Or I could also say batch, and batch allows me to select a folder. And it will automatically run the function that I have selected here on the switchboard on all of the files in that folder at that point. So if I click Start, it will run the action that I have here on all of the documents in that particular input folder. This is not the same as a server. It's not a fully automatic solution where that folder is watched and anytime you drop something in it, it's picked up and processed. It is not that. What it is it gives you a way to quickly process up to 100 documents in a particular folder with a particular action. So if someone sends you 10 chapters of a book and you need to do something to all of those different PDF files, to all of those different chapters, you can simply point to the folder containing all of those chapters. You say Start, and Pdf Toolbox will process all of them. So it's a convenience, if you will. Okay, let me close this one and go to another file. I'll take this one just to show something else. This is a booklet functionality. As you can see, the options are different here, and I'm just going to run this, and Pdf Toolbox is going to convert that single page PDF file, or that PDF where every page was in there as a single page. It's going to create a booklet from that. So if I print this now and I fold it, then I'll have a nice little booklet. Again, very simple. Enter the information that you want, click execute, and Pdf Toolbox does the rest. So this is the switchboard. Now, I'm not going to go into details on all of the functionality that you have here. I have absolutely not enough time to do that. But I do want to show you some of the most important points and give you an overview of what types of stuff that you can do. And to start with that, I'm going to open up a file. It doesn't really matter which one. I'm going to open up a file and I'm going to go into Standards. Standards gives you an overview of the most commonly used pre-flight standards that are used for PDF documents. And in the top row, you can see a number of ISO standards, PDFX1A to PDFX4. In the bottom rows, you can see other standards. Typically, these are specifications from the again, PDF work group, for example. And I can, again, select one of them. I'll take newspaper ad. This is something that was optimized. It's a pre-flight profile that is optimized for those cases where you're creating ads for newspaper. And you can see that it's very, very simple. I don't have any options at all. So nothing to select. The only thing I can do is say execute. And when I do that, Pdf Toolbox will run through the file, and it will try to convert that PDF file into a file that is good for newspaper ads. And it asks me where to save that converted document. So I'll put that on my desktop again. And it does a whole bunch of things. You can actually see that the color of the file changed because there was another ICC profile applied to this document. But there is an indication here that the conversion didn't go according to plan. And if I click on Report, I can get an overview. And in that overview, I get a list of all of the things that were fixed. That's all these items with that little wrench. So some compression was added, for example. The PDF was saved as a PDF 1.3. There are some things, it was converted to PDF X1A document. So a list of everything that was fixed automatically. And then I get warnings and errors. And in this case, for this particular file, I get two warnings on this document. One is text is smaller than 8 points. Why do I get that warning? Well, in that profile that I selected, or that in this case was built into the switchboard, in that profile, it says that if Pdf Toolbox finds text smaller than 8 points, that it should give a warning. So which errors, which warnings that you get is totally dependent on what profile you are using. In the switchboard, you can't change the profile, but if I would go to Tools and then Profiles and Checks and Fixes, you can see that there is an area of the product where you can actually create your own profile. So I can customize this any way I want. Let's return for a second to this result window. If I open this up, and I double-click on some of this text, you can see that there is a yellow outline that appears across that text. And if I double-click another one, you can see that it happens again. So in that result window, I can actually pinpoint exactly which objects caused those particular problems. And I can go one step further. Now, this result window is totally fine if this is for me, if I want to know what's wrong. But imagine that you got this file from a client and you want to tell the client what to fix or where the problems are. If the client doesn't have Pdf Toolbox, then it's a little bit complicated to communicate this information to him, perhaps. And in order to solve that problem, there is a Create Report button at the bottom here. And when I click that button, I can save a report, and I can save a custom PDF report. And I'll say, well, let's perhaps take the built-in report for that, and I'll simply save that on my desktop again. So there are different types of reports, but in this case, I'm choosing for a nicely laid out PDF report. You can see that it shows a little thumbnail of the page that was pre-flighted. I have information about the application, the document, the profile that was used. I get a green check mark in this case because the profile or the report template that I'm using here says that if there are only warnings, I don't want to bother the client with that. I'm only going to show errors in this case. So I get a nice green check mark in this case, some more information about the document, and that's it. Okay, so these reports allow you to communicate what happened during pre-flight to a client. If there is a bunch of errors that you find, then you can create a report and you can send that report to the client so that they know what to fix. And those reports are fully customizable. I have the standard report here, but I could very easily adjust this so that I have my own logo here, perhaps change some of the colors in here, change some of the behavior. I might not want to show everything in here, for example, if I think that that's too technical for a client, and I can remove all of that. You can go pretty far with that and build your own custom report that you know the client will understand and will make your communication with him easier. Okay, so what did we do? We went to one of those built-in profiles, and then I said execute. That did the pre-flight, and then at the end I generated a report that I can now send to the customer. While I did this, I got this extra window in the background. So while that is open, let me show you what that is. And that is actually the profile window that I already talked about. So that is that other thing that lives under Tools. You find the switchboard there under Tools, but I also have profiles, checks, fix-ups, and then some more technical things. These three menu items here, profiles, checks, and fix-ups, will all open up the same window. And I have the same things in here. Profiles gives me a list of all of the pre-flight profiles that are installed. Checks gives me a list of all of the checks, and then fix-ups, the same for fixes. What are these things? Well, a check is one single thing I want to check in a document. For example, I can detect whether the document contains white text not set to knockout. Typically something you want to know about. So I created a check for that, and now I could take this check and put it inside a profile. And then when I run the profile, I do the same thing as I did before from the switchboard. PDF Toolbox will do pre-flight, will find every instance where white text is not set to knockout, and will give me an error or a warning if it finds stuff like that. And then I can create a report from it. So those are checks, individual things that you want to detect in a document and that you can put in a profile. Fix-ups are individual things that you want to correct in a document. For example, I have a fix-up here to convert all color in the document to black and white. And again, once I have a fix-up, I can insert that fix-up into a profile. So a profile is nothing more than a collection of checks and fixes that you want to run on a document. It will fix a number of things, it will check a number of things, and it will give you a report. I won't go into more technical detail about profiles, just know that they are there. There is a whole list of profiles, checks, and fix-ups that are installed by default when you install PDF Toolbox. Feel free to explore that. For this webinar, I'm going to go back to my switchboard, and we're going to look at some of these other categories that we have in here. We talked about imposition. We talked about standards, which does pre-flight with most commonly used profiles. I could also look at pre-press. And in pre-press, I find some of the things that you frequently have to do to fix a document in a pre-press department. For example, Flattened Transparency, which basically runs the Adobe Transparency Flattener engine that is built into PDF Toolbox. Or I could fix objects that are black and that are not set to overprint. I could set those to overprint, either text or vector or text and vector. Same for white objects that are not set to knockout. I can set those to knockout. So this is something that, and you find a lot of these options here in prepress, something that lets you detect a common mistake in PDF documents when you get them, and lets you fix that in basically one click. Open the document, go here, select execute. It will run through the document and fix all of that particular problem. You can see some other stuff in here. I'll point out some of the very useful things. I can add marks to a document, for example. If there are no trim marks or bleed marks in a document, then add marks allows me to specify which marks I want to add and allows me to place those in a document. Or I can do the opposite. I can say, well, I have a document here, and the document contains trim and bleed marks. Let me see if I have an example here. I think this is one. So here I have some marks in it. Well, if the trim box in this document is not correctly defined, then I can run this particular fix, and it will automatically find the trim marks in the document for me. And it will set the trim box correctly on those marks, and the same with the bleed box. So can be very useful in your workflow. When I go to, I'll come back to documents actually. When I go to pages, you'll see that there is a whole range of functionality that has to do with things like page size. I can scale documents. I could scale something from A4 to letter and determine how it should be scaled, whether it's proportionally or not. What should happen to the content? Should it be centered? Should it move to the left-hand side corner? Something like that. I can also do things like rotating pages. I can flip pages. All of these things can be done on the document that you open, or the same type of functionality again is available in these fix-ups that I already talked about. So these types of actions could also be built into a profile and then be run. Then you could run 10 or 20 different fixes that you want in one profile. So one click and all of those fixes would be executed. Some of these things are really to solve very specific problems. And I'll give you two examples. And the first one is here, which is crop to visible. A very common problem is that a designer will create a label, for example, in Illustrator. And often designers have a really big work area inside of Illustrator, and then the label is just a small bit of graphic somewhere in the middle of that work area. If you save that to PDF afterwards, you have a risk of having lots of white space around the document, and this will simply solve that. So it will look at the visible area in the document, and then it will crop away everything that is white on the outside. And then the second thing that I said I was going to talk about, I'm going to go back to arrange, and this is the reader spreads and split in half. Another very common problems for designers working with InDesign in this case is that either they will deliver individual pages if you really want spreads, or they will deliver spreads if you really need individual pages, for example, because you want to use the booklet function afterwards. And these two functions will automatically fix that. So if I have a document containing spreads, again, I have no options here, so the only thing I can do is press execute. If I have a document that contains spreads, I can click execute and it will generate single pages in an intelligent way for me, and then I can use one of the other imposition functions. So a lot of these things that you find here in the switchboard are really there to fix common problems that you might encounter with documents that you get in your shop from outside. When I look at fonts, same thing applies. I can embed fonts if they were not embedded in the document and I have them on my system, or, and this is something that is frequently used, for example, in large format, I can take the text in the document and outline all of the text. Frequently done in Illustrator again, but you can just as well do this in Pdf Toolbox. So simply runs through the document and will convert everything into outlines. Wrong button. I want to go to home. There we go. Colors is another very important one where I am able to, so let me go back to here and then let's take a single click one. There we go. So what I did was convert to black and white, and that instantly uses an ICC profile conversion to convert all of the colors I have in this document into black and white. But the same token, I have conversions between CMYK and RGB, between CMYK and CMYK, either with ICC profiles, or if I have them with device link profiles. So you could create a device link profile to do ink save, for example, or tack reduction. And Pdf Toolbox can then run that device link profile on your documents and do the actual ink save that you want to do. It's something that in a newspaper environment, for example, is actually quite frequently used. Not with the manual version of Pdf Toolbox desktop, but in that case, typically either with the server or the command line version. But using device links for that is completely possible within Pdf Toolbox. What Toolbox can also do, and let me see whether I actually didn't think of taking a file for that, so let me steal something else here really quickly. So if I take this file, for example, and I go to spot colors in the switchboard, then you can see that I automatically get a list of all of the spot colors in the document. And now I can change whatever I want to change. I could simply change the name, or I could say, no, I want to change the name, but I also want to change the alternate color space, which is what determines how that particular spot color is going to look in the document or when it's converted to CMYK. So if it's printed by a device that doesn't understand the concept of a spot color. Or if I want to do that, I could simply convert it to CMYK. So this is a manual tool that allows you to intervene with the spot colors that you have in the document and allows you to clean them up, for example. This gets to be a little bit technical perhaps, but I want to very briefly go back to fix-ups. And we're going to search for V8 in here. So observe that I can simply type in here and it will filter the fix-ups that it shows. Now, what I wanted to show you was that yes, you have this manual way of fixing spot colors in here, but you also have fix-ups in Pdf Toolbox that can do this much more quickly for specific cases. And this is a very good example. It also works on Pantone colors, but this one will automatically convert the name of any spot color that you have in the document to use a C suffix. So if I have a Pantone 123U in the document, it will now convert that to Pantone 123C. So sometimes you have the ability to do things in the switchboard, but if you are willing to go through a little bit of effort to learn what you can do with fix-ups and checks, there are often more powerful ways to do the same thing in the fix-ups or profiles window. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so we talked about ICC color conversion. We talked about device link. I told you that you can do things with spot color. There are also a number of shortcut functions in here. Like if I know a document comes from Office, it was generated from an Office file, I have a button here that where I can say, where will this file be printed? And then it will use built-in intelligence to do the conversion from Office to the colors that you need in that particular printing process. Or you have things like fixed registration color. If someone uses the spot color all inside of a file, well, this is a fix that will convert that into a regular black. If someone uses incorrect for color black, this is a fix that can convert that into regular black. So you have a lot of these very easy fixes for common problems. We point out that there is also the ability to work with images, do downsampling, recompress images to JPEG or JPEG 2000, for example. You can sharpen images, very useful when you start downsampling things. It's often necessary to also use a little bit of sharpening on there. So again, these are things that I can run as simply an action on the document, or I could go to profiles and build a profile that does the same thing. And then I skipped documents, and that's the last thing that I really want to point out here. Well, the second to last, actually. And in a document, you have a number of functions that, again, allow you to do things, but in this case, specifically on the document as a whole. And let me start, for example, with Office to PDF. Office to PDF allows you to simply point to a PowerPoint file or a Word file or an Excel file, and Pdf Toolbox will do the conversion for you. So if I have a PowerPoint file, I simply drop it on here, and what you will get is a good PDF document out of that. The same for images. It can convert PNG or JPEG or TIFF images. I can go PostScript to PDF or PDF to PostScript or EPS. I can do things that Adobe would probably tell me not to do, but it's very useful in some cases. Things like redistilling a document. Redistilling means take this PDF, convert it to PostScript, and then convert it back to PDF with the distiller job options that you select here. This list is customizable, of course. You can put your own settings in there. But that redistilling will often fix a document that is in some way corrupt. So it can be a very useful thing. I would not do it for all files you get in production, but it can be very useful. Let me show you one last thing, and that's image export. And that would allow me to say, for example, I want let's take a JPEG file as an example. JPEG, I want an RGB, and then I want a resolution of maybe 150 dpi overprint simulation so that it looks exactly the same, and then I say execute, save that on my desktop, and what Pdf Toolbox will do is create an image of that PDF document. And this is a function that is, or functionality that is used quite a lot by customers, perhaps not so much in the desktop version, but very, very often in the automated version. If you think about integrating this technology into a web portal, for example, this would allow you to generate a preview or a thumbnail for the documents and use that in that web portal. But there are also cases where I could use this in desktop. Let's say that I'm in a large format. I have a file that doesn't pass through the RIP of a particular output device, not uncommon with large format devices. Well, I could generate a TIFF file, and then I can either generate a CMYK TIFF or even a multi-channel TIFF, depending on what that particular device can support and my file. In this case, I have a CMYK file. Well, it has a spot color in it, so I could do the both. But I can say CMYK, I can set up a good resolution for this. This might be too high if it's a real large format job, but you can set whatever resolution you want, and then it will create a TIFF file that you can send to the RIP directly, and that hopefully then does print where the PDF doesn't print. So functions that have to do with the document. The last one I'll point out here is overlay, that allows you to put a stamp on the document. But again, this is customizable, this list. So if I don't want to put approved in here, but I want to put confidential in here and it's not in the list, then I can go here and say manage overlays. And what you'll see is that will open up a folder. And in that folder, I can just put PDF documents. And those PDF documents can be anything you want. And that will then be added to the document that you process. So simply place an additional PDF in here. That PDF will appear in my list. And when I click execute, I'll get an overlay on the document that I'm processing. Again, and I'm not going to go in detail because it's going to go way over time if I do so, but let me point out that overlay lets you add a simple overlay on a document. But if I would go to fix-ups and I look at some of these fix-ups that are available, you can see that I can even put QR codes or other barcodes in there. So again, the profile functionality in here goes a lot further than what you have in Switchboard. And whether you use the Switchboard or you create your own profiles mainly depends on what you want to do with the document and how far you want to go. Last thing in the Switchboard, I have a workspace icon in here. If I go there, then you can see that I have some other buttons in there. Basically, the workspace area is an area where you can put those icons that you very frequently use. So your favorites if you want. And those can be buttons from the Switchboard itself, but I can also add my favorite profiles and checks and so on. So if I use this quite frequently, then I can add this to the workspace, and you can see that check appear in my workspace. And clicking that will now allow me to run that particular check on the document that I have open, right? So you can customize your workspace here or your Switchboard here to a certain degree as well. Okay, so we talked about the Switchboard, and I spend a lot of time on that, but it is because the Switchboard already gives you a very good idea on what type of things you can do with Pdf Toolbox. Okay, and then you have the profiles that I talked about here and there. So that's the second big thing in PDF Toolbox. It's a little bit more challenging to set up. There is some more customization or configuration that you have to do, but profiles and those checks and fix-ups are typically much more powerful than the switchboard as well. So which one of those you use is basically up to you. And then I want to conclude by showing you one additional thing or functionality, and I'm going to reopen actually the same document I already had open to do so. So let me go to this one to begin with, and if I go to View and then to Visualize ink coverage, you can see that I have a whole range of visualization menu items in here. And if I select ink coverage, and we make this a little bigger, we don't need the profiles anymore, then you can see that I have a mode selection here. So this allows me to select what I want to be looking at, and that's the same as what I have under the View menu. And for ink coverage, I can specify a threshold. So if I know that when I print this document, 270% ink is the maximum that my device can take, then I set that limit here, and then using a sliding color scale, PDF Toolbox will actually highlight in the document where too much ink has been used. You can see all of the printer marks here show up as this very ugly pink color, and that's because they are 400%, of course, which is in this case okay. When you have printer marks, you would expect them to be 400%. But these red areas are way over the limit. Now, if I change the limit, then of course the display changes, because now my limit is 300 and the overrun that I have here is not as high. Now, if I hover my mouse over these and you look at the little patches of color that I have on the right-hand side column, then you can see that you get exact percentages for each of these points as well. So this is a tool that can be used to very quickly identify how a particular document is built. Same thing here. So here everything is under 300. I can go lower with that and see which parts of the document are over 240, for example. But this document I want to use to show one of the other modes, and I'm going to go to individual separations with that one. And in individual separations, I get, again, a visual look at the document, but in a different way. Here, I'm looking at the cyan separation, and now I can use either the pull-down menu here or simply my arrow keys to run through the different separations. So this is magenta, yellow, black, and then I get everything in that Pantone 220C that is in this document as well. So again, a very quick way of looking at is this document correctly built, or if I pre-flight something and I get a pre-flight error, this is a quick way to see if I can spot what is wrong with the document and whether it's going to be a real problem in production or not. What you can also see, and in some workflows this can actually be quite useful, for example, for cost calculation, is that for each color that I have here, PDF Toolbox lists what the percentage is of the page that is painted with that particular color, or what the total square centimeters are that are being covered by that particular color. And that means that if you want to know how much of the spot color is actually going to be used, well, you can use this list to look at what that will be. Okay, now I also have an output preview functionality here. I have something that lets me inspect the page border, maybe see if there is enough bleed. So this lets me focus on the area around the trim box, which is this red line in this particular preview. So the visualizer really gives you different ways to view the document and to identify if there are problems in that particular document. Let me close that. I want to show you one more thing and then I'm done. And in order to do that, I'm going to open these two documents. And then this is the original document that I wanted to show you, and then I have a second version here. Now, if you paid attention, you already saw what the problem was. I'll switch between them again. Then you can see that there's something weird going on here. Now, in this particular document, the changes are kind of noticeable. I have other examples where it's really difficult to see what changed. But luckily, Pdf Toolbox contains functionality called Compare Documents, and that will do a pixel-based comparison between those two files, and it will highlight those changes to you. So I can zoom in on part of the document, and it will show me exactly what changed between those two versions of the document. Compare documents is really useful if you have two versions of a document, you want to know what was changed, or, and that is also very common use, if you have a workflow where you change something to a document and you want to figure out at the end of the workflow whether the workflow broke something, whether there are any changes. So if you're running things and you know that there shouldn't be any visual differences between the files, then you can use this to detect whether there are yes or no visual differences in those documents. Okay, there is a lot more I could tell about Pdf Toolbox Desktop, but I will stop it here. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, or if there is anything that you are wondering whether it is also possible to do, now would be a really good time to enter that in the GoToWebinar control panel. Let me summarize very briefly. This was, like I said, Pdf Toolbox Desktop, either a plugin or a standalone application, runs on Windows and Mac. Functionality is the same on both platforms. And it specializes in either analyzing PDF documents, or doing pre-flight and quality control, or changing things to PDF documents to fix common problems, for example, or do things like imposition and so on. The three main areas that we saw were the switchboard, where you can do things very easily and quickly. Then you have the profile section, where you can build your own profiles. You can start with what is already there, of course, but you can then customize those built-in profiles, or you can build something from scratch. And in such a profile, you can have checks and you can have fix-ups. And then I ended this brief overview session with the visualizer. The visualizer where you could either see things like ink coverage and detect whether something is wrong with the document or what exactly is wrong with the document. Or I can do things like comparing different versions, use output preview. There is a tool to inspect a PDF document and look at all of the attributes of individual objects, and so on and so on. That's it for me. Surprisingly enough, I think I explained everything well, because there are no questions. That's good. If you want to play with Pdf Toolbox yourself, simply go to the 4ps.com or calassoftware.com websites. On that website, you have a download functionality. So if I go to calassoftware.com, I can go to products, Pdf Toolbox, and in Pdf Toolbox, you'll see the whole Pdf Toolbox family that I talked about, the desktop and then server and the automated versions. Under download, you can simply leave your information and then download a trial version. The trial version is fully functional for a limited period of time, so you can download that, install it. You simply have to activate that trial, and then you'll have a limited time of 2 weeks to play with the application, try it out on your own files, see whether it does what you want. And of course, and this is probably how you got the invitation to this webinar at the moment that runs until 4 p.m. If I'm not mistaken, tomorrow morning. Or tomorrow afternoon, rather. At the moment, there is an action for PDF Toolbox where you can purchase it at a much better price than the normal price, which is already not very expensive. So if you haven't heard about that, again, go to the Kala Software or 4P's website, look at the action that is running at the moment, and take advantage of that action. Good, that's it for me. I went a little bit over the half hour that I promised, but then again, there is a lot of stuff to talk about when you talk about PDF Toolbox Desktop. Please download the trial version, give it a ride. If you have any questions or there are things that you can't figure out how to do, send us an email or give us a call. All of that is possible. You find contact information on the website. You have my email address here on the slide as well. So just get into contact. If you want to take advantage of the promotion for PDF Toolbox Desktop, don't forget that it's really, really limited in time. It is only until afternoon tomorrow. And keep in mind that Kalas typically only does this one time a year. Call it a Christmas promo if you want. But it's something that only happens once a year. So if you were planning to buy PDF Toolbox Desktop or you were hesitating to whether or not you should buy it, now is a very good time to do so. Thank you very much for joining. Hopefully I will see many of you again for a next webinar. The only thing that I still need to do is thank you for being here and hoping that you have a really great rest of the day.